So before I start talking about the things that we do with the silage, first is how we call that material. And people call the haylage or silage or baleage or all different names. And some people may think that they were different. So when there is no true or false definition. But in general, they call baleage what is in a round bale, right? The baleage is something that is in a round bale and it has moisture, so will make fermentation. So you bale in a round bale and wrap, and the dry matter is probably between less than 85, less than hay, and more than 30, 35, more than silage. So that become a fermented product that is in a round bale. That is baleage. So you can do haylage, there will be the same dry matter concentration, but somebody do it and put in plastic, right? Just chop it up and blow in the plastic. That will be haylage, right? It's not in round bales, but also will be a product of fermentation. When you open it up, you're going to smell it. So we will ferment. And silage is the same thing, but silage usually has lower dry matter concentration. So when you do silage, and traditionally, we do corn silage, right? If I ask you silage, you think about corn right away. So, and that's where we used to make silage with corn. 30, 35% dry matter is a good range. Silage is corn is the ideal crop to make silage. So if you have a standard crop, something that is really good is corn. Because it has a starch, it has sugars, and the fiber is very digestible. So always you have good silage from corn, right? But that is the definition. If you see around, it's not written in stone, but if people talk to you about baleage, it may be a round bale fermented, haylage may be different things, but also fermentation, and silage is just weather. It's what you put in a bag or put in a bunk, but it's always weather. And the thing is, it has been used since before hay. Silage is something that is very old, and it started in Europe when they were first growing animals. And then move on along the time, right, and translate to the modern days that we have here. Some technology, a lot of corn silage or alfalfa silage, but all the technology came from temperate regions. The region was always tempered with good forage, good corn silage, and then it started moving south, right, when people start doing more things with cattle. You get in Florida, Louisiana, Central America, South America, Australia, even in Africa. And then we don't have a lot of corn silage and we don't have a lot of alfalfa. We have other things. Because of that, people start making silage with what we have. It was always bad, right? So they quit. Everybody quits. They said, that doesn't work for us. But what happened is the dairy producers always did, because dairy has a high nutrient requirement. So when you talk about silage 10 years ago, you think about dairy. You say, oh, dairy producers somewhere in Okeechobee, they make silage, right? Everybody that makes silage was a dairy, and it was a lot of work. Look at this picture here. Tires, you know, to keep the tarp, a big tarp that will punch holes, and you need to redo it and stretch the tarp and go with the heavy machinery on the top of the silo and make it, you know, the air to go away. And that was a lot of work. And there was a lot of work, so the dairy people, they need it because they need high quality feed. When we are in the beef business, in general, our animals do not have that much nutrient requirement. So all the beef cattle producers, or most of them, they just gave up. They said, no, that's not for me. It's too good, but it's too expensive, too much work. So we don't do it. That is what happened over time. But what happens like 10 years ago is they developed the machine, right? Everybody knows this machine right now is the wrapper. And then from something that was really complex with tires, tarp, etc., it became really simple. It became as simple as everybody used to make hay. You use the same machine with bale, wrap, and that's it. And that was a good thing on the standpoint that it was doable for a broader number of producers, but also a bad thing. Really bad, because everybody thought that, well, now we can wrap, right? And then we come in the summer, harvest all the trash that we have over there, bale, put in a wrap, and have a good expectation. We think that we put whatever it is in that bag, and it'll be good. Because we spend all that money, right, to cut and wrap, and that didn't happen. And that's not happening. And I received the samples here at the lab for the whole state of Florida, and when we get haylage or silage samples, we know that in general it's pretty bad. Because there is this perception that if you wrap, we'll make it better. And that is not true at all. In fact, when you wrap and the fermentation process starts, will make it worse. If it's something that preserves really well, it may be the same, like corn silage. It will be the same. But if you have a limpo grass that is really bad on the field and you wrap that, what you have when you're going to feed 2 months afterwards will be worse. Why? Because those microbes need nutrients for fermentation. So they will consume a lot of the nutrients from the grass to make the fermentation. Some of those nutrients are lost. So that will be lost. So if you wrap, will not make it better. First question of the pre-test there. Wrapping does not make it better. Period. And one thing that is pretty traditional with any forage, right? When we want a tonnage here, what do? Let it grow, right? Let it grow, and you're going to get tonnage. That's easy. But what happens when you get that much tonnage? The quality goes down, right? And we always aiming for quantity because we need to pay for the custom work, so on and so forth. So, and then we don't have time, too much rain. And then we get the nutritive value that really goes downhill. Remember, if you put something really bad in a bag, what will come out will be worse. So then we start with something bad, the end result will be even worse. And one problem, as I mentioned to you, why in the past we failed too much, right? We started doing this silage many years ago and didn't work. Why? The grasses that we have here are not good to make silage, period. Because to make silage, you need relatively high dry matter concentration. Our forages here, if you come in the summer during the rainy period, you take a sample, that will be 20% dry matter, right there. Very low. So even, therefore, you need to let it wilt. So dry matter is low. There is very minimal water-soluble carbohydrates. Those are the ones that make the fermentation good. Our forage has a lot of fiber, but not a lot of water-soluble carbohydrates. If you ask me what is the concentration, the average will be about 4%, 5% maximum. When you get a old Timothy from up north, that will be about 8. So our forages have very low water-soluble carbohydrates. And a lot of people send samples to the lab, right? Horse producers, and they are concerned that they get founder, and they want to know the water-soluble carbohydrate concentration in the forage, because some horses are sensitive to a lot of sugars, and that is not a concern that we should have with our forages. Stargrass, limpo grass, bahia grass, Bermuda grass, in general, they are very low. And that is really bad for silage, because we don't have anything to make the fermentation. It doesn't have anything to ferment. And what happened is it creates this buffering. What is we wanted that silage, when you first put it together, to drop pH. That's what we want. We want really the pH to be low. With low pH, the microbes, the bad microbes, do not grow. Because you don't have sugars, the pH doesn't drop. And then you have the growth of everything that you don't want in that bag. So I told you how bad it is to make silage and haylage, right? I think by now you say, well, I will not do that anymore. But there is one catch there. Probably it's the only thing that we can do here in Florida in the summer. We don't have an option, right? Right now, it's very hard to make hay. This is a graph that Dr. Bates put together many years ago. This is the probability of rain here in Florida. So, and the probability of not having rain, right? So if you go there in June and July, you may have 10% chance that we will not have rain. 10%. So that means 90% of chance you may have some rain. And then if you need to make hay, right, and you need to dry for 3-4 days, that hay can get about 3-4 rains on the top, and that will not work. With the silage or the haylage, you may bale in the same day. So it decreases your risk. It's more expensive though, because remember you have the plastic, and you harvest many more bales because you are baling with moisture. So if you pay the custom guy by bale, when you harvest the silage, you're gonna have many more bales because you still have a lot of moisture there. And you're gonna pay for the plastic. So that makes more expensive, but you may not have an option, right? If you need to harvest something, you may have to make haylage because otherwise you'll not do anything. This table is very important because if you decide to test your silage, you need to have these numbers in mind. Those were in the pre-questions as well. So pH, as I mentioned to you, is one important thing. So it should be 5 or below. We want a low pH, so the microbes will not grow, right? The bad ones. So we want a low pH. Lactic acid is the one that makes the silage smell like chocolate. I think some of you have smelled like good silage. It smells sweet. On the other hand, and that lactic acid was always on the question there, the pre-test, you wanted that to be high. And that may be 6 to 8. In our silage here is around 3. And sometimes it's 0. I will show you some silage that we did here that was 0. But 6 to 8, corn silage, good corn silage, you have about 8. But that is another thing, is the only acid that you want it to be high. Lactic acid, you want it to be as high as it can be. If you send a sample out, you want a low pH and high lactic acid. The other acids doesn't help much. Acetic acid helps to decrease the pH, but also decrease intake of the forage because it smells like vinegar. Have you smelled silage that smells like vinegar? It's not offensive, but it's not the one that smells sweet. That is a sign that you have a lot of acetic acid. So then, it may help on the fermentation and decrease the fungi, but the intake from the animals may be reduced. And then propionic acid and butyric acid, they are not good. Although they are acids and they decrease the pH, many times they are also related to decreased intake. So are the forages that animals don't like to eat. When you get a silage that smells really bad, have you seen those? That is really humid and they have the black mold, and if you touch it, it will not get out of you for a long time. It's really bad smell. That's butyric acid, right there. So if you have one of those, and I think if you have made silage here in South Florida, you have seen those. And that is the butyric acid that you don't want to have in the silage. We'll talk about dry matter now, as I mentioned. So let's start step by step. So you decide to cut a good forage, right? To start with, good nutritive value. That is the first start. If it's bad, you'll be bad. But if you harvest something that will be okay, you get a good start. Second step is to manage that dry matter concentration. We all know here, if you have humidity and hot weather, what are you going to have? Fungi, right? You can have in your house, in the bread, that you keep it there, and you grow in the silage the same way. What the fungi does, it consumes all the energy that we talk about that is important, and also, in the bottom side, may create some toxins in the silage. So what is the probability of having the toxins created by fungi? So most of you have done silage, some of you have, and when you open it up, have you seen bales with white mold on it? Did you feed those? Did the cows die? No. It's very difficult to find a situation where we all will create the mycotoxins to the point that it may hurt your cows. But it's a possibility, it's a risk. If you have more mold, you have greater risk that you're gonna, and sometimes it's not clinical, right? It may be subclinical. That means your cows may be in good shape, but you may affect the reproduction or other things. We have tested many silage with high fungi concentration, and I have never found a concentration of mycotoxins that will hurt an animal, according to the literature. But that may happen, so then it's better to have something. And the other point is not only the mycotoxins, but you use the energy that will be to feed your animals for the fungi to grow. So that's why it's bad. And second step, good forage is to wilt the forage. Wilt to 50% dry matter. That's what we want. In general, we wanted to drop it to half, 50% dry matter. How long it takes to drop to 50% dry matter? May. If it's limpo grass, it may take 2 days, right? If it's jigs, it may take 3 hours. We're gonna test some on the field today, and I bet you'll be pretty close to 50%, and we harvest at 9:30. Because jigs has thin stems, and you lose moisture much quicker. If it's a star grass, it may take a day and a half. So then, that's why it's so important to measure, because we don't know. If you twist it, throw in the air, and do whatever you want, no, that's a guessing. So I think we have some ways to measure so you can make better decisions regarding the moisture. That is so important. So some people ask me, say, well, if I make haylage, you'll be better than hay. Will be more expensive, we talk about it, but no, it's not always better. Because if you have a hay and a haylage with the same nutritive value, you may have similar results. In this trial here, Dr. Burns, he did that, and I was working, when he was doing this work here, and we saw the numbers, they were not really exactly the same nutritive value. This is blue stem. We have some confounding effect, but he saw that the results here on the intake, some of the digestible dry matter intake, the amount of energy that these animals were very similar. Very similar. Even with a little difference, digestibility here in the forage. The hay was better than the haylage, but the end product was pretty similar. When you have wet forage, it seems that the animals like it better than dry forage. But that, I don't think, will create a difference in your outcome. So the cows will not be fatter because they are eating haylage. If the hay and the haylage is the same nutritive value, will be the same. And here we did with jigs, a little trial. So you have ideal dry matter or really wet jig silage. And the pH, when you have high dry matter, was lower. Both were good silage because the jigs had good nutritive value, but we got lower pH with a high dry matter when you let it wilt. And greater lactic acid, remember? We want a greater lactic acid. So we let it wilt for half day, outcome was better. So, and now I'll talk about something that people like to talk about, that is, you know, you may have bad forage, you cannot let it wilt, and then you have that idea, if I put that inoculant, that will solve my problem, right? I'll buy the expensive inoculant, add there, and everything that I did wrong will be corrected, right? Wrong, right? That won't happen. You just spend more money. So we have some different categories of things that I will show you today. One is one that is very effective, but it's time consuming, and it may take a little while to get it done, and you have some extra machinery to add to the system, and that is the molasses. If you add molasses to your haylage, that thing will be better. The fermentation will be better. We will enhance the fermentation, we'll drop pH, and the nutritive value of the forage will be better. And you are not losing the molasses. The molasses will be there when you feed the haylage. So that is one option for you to increase the fermentation and the nutritive value of the forage. We're going to show you today. It's pretty simple. It's exactly like it's in this picture here, how we drip the molasses and make the bales. And it's also on YouTube. If you like the internet, you can watch it. We have some trials here. We did the molasses, right? And we tested. And we looked for forage that was really wet. Look at the dry matter concentration here. Really wet. Because we wanted to challenge to see if you could get better results. Look at what happened with the water-soluble carbohydrates here. We increase more than half, because when you add molasses, you add sugars, so you enhance the fermentation right there. Digestibility of the forage increase, because you add something that's really digestible. pH decrease, and the lactic acid increase. So when you add the molasses, all good. You can have a better silage, a better feed. So in the end, we fed the heifers, 2 years. We make those round bales, and we fed the heifers in the barn, and look at the digestibility of the forage with molasses. It's better. And for that, we have animals ate more the silage with molasses than regular silage. So it's good for the fermentation, good for the nutritive value, and good for the quality. So your animals will eat more of that material. Again, it's an investment, takes more work, but it's a very effective way to increase the quality of the silage. Second, inoculants. That is the bacterial inoculants, the one that they have a new one every year. You know, when you go to the feed store next year, they will tell you that they have a new one that is better. The next one will be better. They are always better next year. So, huh? Yeah, a little more, but they are better. Yeah. I have been doing the work with the inoculants for 6 years now. We saw some results. It changed slightly some things, like it happened in this busy table here, but it never improved the quality of the fermentation consistently. And we tested more than 10. You know, next year you're going to have a better one, right? I cannot keep up with all of them, but the ones that we had in the market until last year, we tested all of them. And we never had anything consistent that justified me to include that in the silage. And I'm talking about Bermuda grass, limpo grass, I'm not talking about corn silage. I'm talking about haylage here for our grasses. So no consistent results. We have the B500, the Buchneri, that is a bacteria that is actually designed to produce acetic acid. The silage will smells more like vinegar. And it did that when we add to our silage, increase the acetic acid, as you can see here, 332. But the increase was not sufficient to increase the quality of the fermentation, because there is no substrate, right? The bacteria is hungry for something to make a fermentation, but those grasses don't have anything. So far, I think we don't have a consistent inoculant, bacterial inoculant that will help you on your silage. We don't use any. And the last one that I'll talk about and will show you today is the propionic acid. We talk about propionic acid is also an acid that is produced from fermentation, but we use in forages for different reasons, or even in feed. If you are in the dairy business, they come and spray propionic acid on the feed, on the bunk, just to preserve the feed for a longer time and avoid fermentation. What the propionic acid does, it just inhibits fungi. It doesn't let fungi and mold to grow. So we just apply that product in our silage here. That has been done before with corn silage, bad corn silage, and the results were quite effective. So we just decided to do that here as well. Just one little story here. I went to a silage meeting in Germany. So they have silage from all over the world there. So, and there was 250 abstracts or people presenting work. There was one abstract about tropical forages among 250. Just one. It was mine, right? So I don't need to tell you that nobody came to see my thing, right? So, you know, I think they kept away. They said, I don't even know what this guy presenting, right? But then the guy that created that meeting 20 years ago, he stopped by. He's from UK. He stopped by my poster, probably the only one. I think he was going through, he want to be nice. And he looked at me, and I was presenting the effect of inoculants, the ones that I just showed you. And he looked at me and asked me, why do you try to apply inoculants to this bed forage here? And I said, I have been doing that for 5, 6 years now. And he said, you are wasting your time, you know. I don't need to be a genius to tell you that that won't work, but I'll tell you what may work. And then he said, you need to apply potassium sorbate or propionic acid or something that you're going to get better results. I promise you. And I said, okay, I hear you. So first he called me stupid, right? So I was a little itchy there. But then he gave me a suggestion. He said, well, I'll take it. This guy had been working with silage all his life. And that's what I did. So we did here at the research center. So I will skip this table, but this one is the most important. So this is jigs, and it was a really good forage. So there was a problem because we made a good haylage even when we didn't apply anything because the jigs was good quality. But look at the pH, how it dropped when we increased from 0 to 1, just with the propionic acid. And look at that lactic acid. We almost double, or we increased significantly with better fermentation. We could smell differently the silos that were treated with propionic acid. So it makes a huge difference in our forage. And we increased propionic acid, right, because we add some propionic acid to the silo. But look at the butyric acid. That's why we couldn't smell the difference, because the ones that we have propionic acid doesn't stink. And the other ones, we could still smell that stinky, thing that comes from the butyric acid. So that was a great thing, I think, that we did. And then, I think most of you that work with vegetables and around your area have seen this plant. It's called sun hemp. It's a plant that they use as a cover crop. And I have been trying to use as forage here for 4 years now. But the thing is, this thing grows really fast. Although it's a legume, it grows really fast, has really thick stems, quality is not good, has some alkaloids that are not good for cattle, and it doesn't ferment very well because it has a lot of protein and that doesn't let the pH to drop. So I said, well, that may be a good plant to test with the propionic acid because we cannot make haylage, a good haylage from this thing. And we have reports from producers saying, I tried to make haylage or silage, didn't work. So I said, well, that may be a good thing to try. And look at what happened here when we applied the propionic acid. Remember, this is bad forage. And the pH dropped from 5.6 to 4.5, to ideal pH. And then look at the lactic acid. Just because we changed the pH, look at how it increased. So we make something that was nasty to become okay, right? And then you can probably feed. But if you keep it here, when we didn't do anything, you cannot feed this thing. You'll be stinky and moldy, and the nutritive value is low anyway. So you'll not have a good feed value. Look at the butyric acid. It decreased from 5 to almost 0. So propionic acid was extremely effective when you have something really bad. And I think that's the situation that we need to consider using propionic acid. So, and to finish here the presentation, some things that we learn, as we go. One thing that we like to do is to bale a lot of bales, right, on the field. We come and bale everything that we can, and then we start loading and wrapping. Sometimes what happens is, daylight ends, and you leave the bales on the field, right? The place where that bale is, most of the time is wet, right? The soil is wet because it's summer. It starts picking up moisture. You pick up moisture, and then you have those hot spots. You wrap, you don't know what happened, but you have that big mold area. That is because you left the bale on the field, and that pick up the moisture from the ground. So you just bale what you can load out of the field. Otherwise, you just leave it there drying. Don't bale. Leave it there. Because otherwise, if you leave it there for a long time, you may have those hot spots, and that's pretty good. That's where the animals don't eat, right? I think you have seen that you put it out, and they eat around, and they will leave that part there, and they don't touch it, because it's really bad, and we cannot blame them. What we're going to do today is the dry matter, right? Make the calculation of the dry matter the way that you can. I think everybody here will have a microwave, right? It's pretty common to have a microwave you can do in your kitchen. So that's what we're going to do today. If you wanted to go a little further, you can have the moisture meters and measure, but microwave will do it. You can get a good estimate with your microwave. Your wife may not like it, but sometimes it's necessary. And I'll teach you also today the way that you not burn your house. Because with the microwave and forages, we have bad experience before. So I will show you a very important step so you do not burn your house. The biggest wrecks that I have seen with haylage is with sorghum, millet, and Sudan grass. That's the worst. The stems are this thick. Even if you have a conditioner, that will not go well. They will become this thick. The moisture is right there. They bale, they put in the plastic. It's so much moisture coming to the bottom that breaks the plastic. And then you're going to see the wrap has this bell shape because all the moisture came to the bottom, right? And open the plastic. And then eventually you break it. And that is where all the butyric acid and fungi will grow right there. And the main problem is not because Sudan grass, millet, and sorghum are bad. They are really good. It's the moisture problem. Moisture is a problem with this grass. And if you have a grass that has thick stems, like Hermatria, that's a problem as well. So you need to have more time for wilting because otherwise it may be really bad. And then the layers of plastic, right? If you put 2 or 3 layers, you're going to have a lot of punches on it, and then that plastic can let the oxygen to go in and out. It's not 100% proof. When you have oxygen coming in, you're going to have mold. So you need to put at least 6 layers. At least, that's the recommended. Some people in the north, now they have a plastic. Instead of putting a net around your bale, they put a plastic. They bale and wrap it with a plastic, and then it can save you 2 layers in the wrapping. It's not popular around here, so that's not a big concern. But some people have saved some plastic because they bale the forage with that layer of plastic, and then at wrapping time, they will put it right. So to finish up here before we go to the post-test, and then we'll go to the field really quick. That's the only sentence that I want you to remember. Remember, you know, something in, something out. So that is pretty simple. If it's not good going in, it's not good going out. The dry matter is the second most important step. Don't play with the dry matter because that will mess up the whole haylage thing. If you let it wilt, let it have some time, dry matter will drop, so you have less chance for the fungi. We have this molasses and propionic acid. They both have been effective, you know, to improve the fermentation, but the biological inoculants, at this time, we don't have anything consistent. So that will improve the quality. And we need to keep doing research, and probably they will release some new strains. But at this point, I don't think they justify. So I'd like to thank the Dairy Checkoff Committee, because they have been the ones funding most of the silage and haylage research here at the center. We appreciate their, and they are, probably I don't see anybody from the Dairy Checkoff here, but you can see that they are producers like us. They are in Okeechobee, Hardy County, Highlands counties, people that we work on a daily basis, and I'd like to thank them for the support. So I will take a few questions that you might have, and then we will do the post-test. And then we will go to the field, load it up and go to the field. Thank you.
You fertilize about 2 or 3 weeks before harvesting mesograss. It increases the protein, but does it increase the starch?
The question was about increasing the protein and increasing the starch. It's likely that will not increase the starch, because when you fertilize, the main factor coming out of the fertilization is increase in enzymes that will create more tonnage. And those enzymes are the ones that are part of the protein concentration in the grass, right? The photosynthesis keep going, but that grass in the summer is really effective to transform the starch in NDF, in cell wall. That transformation is really fast. So you have very little. The only way that you can increase the starch is to have a new regrowth. But then you gave up tonnage. That is the only way. Jimmy?
Molasses and propionic acid together?
Yeah, the question is molasses and propionic acid together, and Jimmy, we have not done that. I think it's probably something that's going, now we are doing propionic acid with inoculant. It's what we are doing right now, but we never tried the molasses and propionic acid together. Yes, sir.
How long, I did some of the molasses.
Uh-huh. Mhm. To stay good? Yeah, the question is about how long you take, right? And probably start spoiling. As I said, that plastic may have some oxygen going in and out. In theory, that will be good for several years. But we know that probably about after a year, you start seeing some mold showing up even on good silage, and I think it's because that oxygen. The peak of fermentation and you'll be stable in 3 months. In 3 months, you do not supposed to have any change if nothing happens, right? But then on that layer on the top, probably you're going to have some oxygen in and out, and that will create probably in a year, you're going to have some changes.
What kind of rate of, I mean, how do you measure the molasses?
Yeah, we do, oh, I forgot to mention the rate of molasses. We do about 40 pounds to a ton. And we have a try, I do here with the scale and everything, but what you can do is, you'll be about 3 bales. It depends the size of your bale, right? Let's say that you have 3 bales, you make a ton. Or 2 bales if you have bigger bales. And then you run your tractor and just see when you get the 2 bales. And then we have a PVC here with a valve. And you just do the calibration. We know how long you take for the tractor to get there and let it drip. If you need more, you open it up or close, and you need to try a few times. And what we need to do when we start, we actually had, I think, not enough holes because it's really thick. So we just punch more holes in the PVC, and then you can increase the output. But yeah, 40 pounds per ton, I think it's sufficient. Yes. Yeah, and that's a really good question. In fact, we put some smut grass seeds inside of the bale, and then after 3 months, we took it out and, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that would, yeah. Yes.
Will the cattle less molasses if there's molasses in the haylage? Like, can you deflate a cost?
Yeah.
They'll use less off the milk?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question, and I think if the cattle will eat less molasses, right? I don't think that will affect it because you have a very little quantity in the bale, but because you have that increase in digestibility in the forage that is treated with molasses, you can adjust the amount that you decide to give to the cattle, right? Because you're going to have something that's more digestible, you may offer less molasses. But if you leave ad libitum, I don't think that will affect the amount that they will eat. And another thing important about the molasses is we use the black strap. So no urea added, nothing added, no minerals, nothing. Because when you have the urea added, that messed up the fermentation. The urea doesn't let the pH drop. So if you use the molasses on the haylage, you use just the black strap, the natural molasses. And sometimes it's hard to find, and you need to ask Westways or somebody that will sell the molasses to make that for you, or just to provide the black strap.